The first thing Adrian Vale noticed about his new client was the blood on his cuff. The second was that Cassian Rook wasn't wearing a worried expression. He was sitting calmly inside the law firm's conference room, hands cuffed in front of him, while two detectives waited outside. Adrian closed the door. "You're Cassian Rook?" Cassian looked up. Unfortunately, Adrian placed the case file on the table. "You're being charged with murdering Elias Mercer." "I know. His body was found in a private parking garage." "I know. Your fingerprints were found beside the body." Cassian said nothing. "Your vehicle was recorded entering the garage." Still nothing. Adrian opened another file. $3 million was transferred from an account connected to you the night before the murder. Cassian finally looked interested. "Keep going." Adrian frowned. "The victim's final phone call identified you." Cassian leaned back. "And you believe I killed him?" "I'm your attorney. I'm not supposed to believe anything until I investigate." For the first time, Cassian smiled. It wasn't reassuring. It was almost amused. "Good." Adrian studied him. "You don't seem particularly concerned." "I am." "You're hiding it well." "I've had practice." Adrian closed the file. "Then tell me what happened." Cassian's expression changed. "Someone framed me." "Who?" Cassian stared at him for several seconds. Then he leaned forward. His voice dropped to a whisper. "The person who recommended me to this firm." Adrian's fingers stopped moving. His managing partner had personally assigned this case. The same man who had insisted Adrian was the perfect attorney for Cassian. Adrian suddenly remembered something strange. His partner had never once asked whether Cassian was actually guilty. He had only said, "Take the case." Cassian watched the realization appear on Adrian's face. "Now you're wondering why you were chosen." Adrian's stomach tightened. "Yes." Cassian glanced toward the conference room door. "Then we're finally asking the right question." Adrian looked at the murder file again. Suddenly, defending Cassian Rook didn't feel like a legal assignment. It felt like someone had deliberately placed a target on his back, and Adrian had just stepped directly into it. By the third day, Adrian had discovered something deeply inconvenient. His supposedly ruthless client had a habit of helping people who could never repay him. Adrian noticed it while reviewing Cassian's financial records. There were hundreds of unexplained payments. At first, they looked suspicious. Then Adrian opened the attached documents. A hospital bill for an employee's sick child, tuition for another employee's daughter, rent paid for a family whose father had died unexpectedly. None of the payments carried Cassian's name. Adrian looked up from his laptop. "You've been hiding charity payments?" Cassian continued reading a document. "No." "Then what are these?" "Private assistance." "Why hide it?" Cassian finally looked at him. "Because it's not charity if I do it for publicity." Adrian stared. The man sitting across from him was supposed to be a ruthless criminal mastermind. Yet he was quietly paying medical bills for strangers. Adrian kept investigating. Cassian funded 2 shelters for vulnerable Omegas. He had prohibited weapons inside several legitimate businesses. And on his desk sat an old photograph of a young Alpha smiling beside him. Adrian pointed toward it. "Your brother?" Cassian's expression immediately changed. "Yes." "What happened?" "He's dead." Adrian lowered his hand. "I'm sorry." Cassian stared at the photograph. He discovered something. "What?" "Illegal medical trials." Adrian went still. "Trials involving Omegas." Cassian nodded. "My brother tried to expose them." "What happened?" "He died before he could." Adrian suddenly remembered the murder victim. Elias Mercer had been investigating illegal corporate activities before his death. Was Elias involved? Cassian looked at him. "He knew my brother." The room fell silent. Adrian slowly closed his laptop. "This case isn't about a murder." "No, it's about whoever killed your brother." Cassian didn't answer. That evening, Adrian left the office later than usual. He reached his car, unlocked it, and started the engine. The brake pedal felt strangely soft. Adrian pressed it again. Nothing. His heart dropped. The car accelerated toward the parking barrier. Then, another vehicle slammed into his from the side. His car spun. Adrian's head struck the window. When he opened his eyes, Cassian was standing outside. He had somehow reached him. Cassian pulled open the driver's door. "Are you hurt?" Adrian stared at him. "How did you?" "I've been watching the people watching you." Adrian's blood ran cold. Cassian looked toward the disabled brakes, then back at him. "They weren't trying to scare you." His voice became dangerously quiet. "They were trying to kill you." Adrian spent the entire night staring at one question. Who wanted him dead? By morning, he had stopped treating Cassian's case like an ordinary murder defense. He started following the money. The $3 million transfer connected to Cassian led through 4 shell companies. The 4th company belonged to Victor Rook, Cassian's uncle. Adrian searched deeper. Victor was respected throughout Los Angeles. He funded hospitals, sponsored charities, appeared at political events. Everyone loved him. But the financial records told another story. Millions had moved between Victor's companies and a private medical corporation. That corporation had been investigated twice for unethical experiments involving vulnerable omegas. Both investigations had mysteriously disappeared. Adrian's stomach tightened. He called Cassian. "I found your uncle." There was silence. Then Cassian asked, "What did you find?" "Payments connecting him to the medical company." Another silence. "My brother discovered them," Cassian finally said. Adrian sat back. "And Elias. He discovered them too." So Victor had reasons to silence both of them. "Yes." Adrian looked at the murder file. "Why frame you?" "Because I was the easiest person to blame. And because you inherited your father's company." Cassian said nothing. Adrian suddenly understood. Victor didn't simply want Cassian imprisoned. He wanted Cassian removed. The investigation continued until Adrian discovered something even closer to home. One of the shell companies had paid a consulting firm. That firm had paid his law firm's managing partner. Adrian's blood ran cold. He immediately drove to the managing partner's office. "You knew." The older man looked up calmly. "Knew what?" "Victor Rook." Silence. Adrian placed the financial documents on his desk. "You were paid to make sure Cassian received a lawyer who would settle this case quickly." The managing partner slowly leaned back. "You're becoming emotional." "I'm becoming careful." The man's expression hardened. "You should walk away." "No." "Adrian, how many people have you helped Victor silence?" The room went quiet. Then the managing partner stood. "You don't understand what you're involved in." Adrian picked up the documents. "Then explain it." The man stepped closer. "Walk away from Cassian Rook." His voice dropped. "Or you won't have a career to return to." Adrian stared at him, then walked out. He found Cassian waiting in his office. Adrian dropped the documents onto the desk. "Your uncle owns half the evidence." Cassian looked at him. "And the other half?" Adrian met his eyes. "My own law firm." For the first time, Cassian looked genuinely afraid. Not for himself, for Adrian. Adrian disappeared at 7:42 p.m. One moment, he was leaving the courthouse. The next, a black van blocked his path. A hand covered his mouth. Then darkness. When Adrian woke, his wrists were tied to a metal chair. A single light hung above him. His suit was torn. His phone was gone. Across the room stood Victor Rook. Adrian recognized him immediately. "So you're the reason Cassian was framed." Victor smiled. "You've been inconvenient." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Where's Cassian?" "Exactly where I want him." Victor placed a phone on the table. The screen showed Cassian entering his office. A message appeared. "Drop the case." Adrian looked at Victor. "He won't." Victor laughed. "Everyone has a price. You don't know him." "I know him better than you do." Victor leaned closer. "Give me the evidence." Adrian smiled faintly. "You already lost." Victor's expression changed. "What?" Adrian said nothing. Because Victor didn't know about the secure legal archive. 3 days earlier, Adrian had uploaded every document he discovered. If he failed to check in within 48 hours, the files would automatically be released. Victor hadn't won. He had simply given Adrian more time. Meanwhile, Cassian received the kidnapping video. His security team stood around him. "We can surrender the evidence." Cassian stared at the screen. Adrian was injured. Blood ran down his temple. One advisor spoke carefully. "If you release the files, he'll live." Cassian remained silent. Then he said, "No." Everyone looked at him. "We'll get him back." "What about the evidence?" Cassian's eyes hardened. "Victor doesn't know where it is." Hours later, Cassian's men located the warehouse. The rescue was brutal and fast. When Cassian found Adrian, he dropped his weapon and rushed toward him. "Adrian!" Adrian slowly opened his eyes. "You came." Cassian knelt beside him. "I told you." He cut through the restraints. "I don't abandon people who trust me." Adrian looked at him. For months, Cassian had been his client, a dangerous alpha, a murder suspect, a man everyone warned him to fear. But now, staring into Cassian's frightened eyes, Adrian saw something nobody else had seen. Fear, not for himself, for him. Cassian carefully touched Adrian's face. "Can you stand?" Adrian nodded. With help. Cassian pulled him gently to his feet. And as they walked out together, Adrian realized something that terrified him more than the kidnapping. Somewhere between the investigation, the threats, and the sleepless nights, Cassian Rook had stopped being just his client. The courtroom was packed when Adrian walked in. Reporters filled every row. Cameras pointed toward Cassian. Victor's lawyers sat confidently at the opposite table. Everyone expected Cassian Rook to be convicted. Adrian knew better. He placed his files on the table and looked at his client. Cassian met his eyes. "You don't have to do this." Adrian frowned. "Do what?" "Risk your career for me." Adrian smiled faintly. "You've forgotten something." "What?" "I'm your lawyer." Cassian's expression softened. The trial began. The prosecution presented the fingerprints, the vehicle footage, the financial transfers. Then they played the victim's final phone call. Every piece of evidence appeared to point toward Cassian, until Adrian stood. "The prosecution has shown you evidence." He walked toward the jury. "But evidence without context can become a weapon." He introduced the financial records. The shell companies, the hidden transfers, the medical corporation. Then he called the first witness. A former employee testified that Victor had ordered records destroyed. Another revealed Cassian's brother had discovered the illegal experiments. The courtroom grew tense. Then Victor's attorney attacked Adrian. "Isn't it true you're emotionally involved with your client?" Adrian remained silent. "Isn't it true you were kidnapped because of him?" Still silent. "Isn't it true you're defending him because you have feelings for him?" The courtroom erupted in whispers. Cassian looked at Adrian. His expression said, "Don't let them use me against you." Adrian turned toward the judge. "Your Honor, I'll answer." The room fell silent. "I'm defending my client because the evidence proves he was framed." The attorney smiled. "Nothing more?" Adrian looked toward Cassian. "Nothing relevant to this case." Then he opened a final folder. "I'd like to submit Exhibit 47. The prosecution objected. The judge allowed it. Adrian pressed play. Victor's recorded voice filled the courtroom. "Kill Mercer. Frame Cassian. Once he's gone, the company belongs to me." Silence. Victor's face went white. Cassian closed his eyes. For years, his family had been destroyed by this man. Now the truth was finally impossible to bury. The jury returned their verdict hours later. Not guilty. Cassian was free. Victor was arrested immediately. Outside the courtroom, reporters surrounded Adrian and Cassian. But Cassian barely noticed them. He looked at Adrian. "You did it." Adrian shook his head. "We did." Cassian smiled, then quietly said, "Now I know what I have to do." Adrian frowned. "What?" Cassian looked back at his family's empire. "Burn down everything my family built on lies." Cassian stood inside his father's old office and stared at the city below. For generations, the Rook family had built an empire through wealth, influence, and fear. Now he knew what some of that wealth had cost: lives, families, vulnerable Omegas who had been treated like disposable experiments. His advisors gathered behind him. "The board wants you to take control immediately." Cassian shook his head. "They can wait." One advisor frowned. "You've just been cleared of murder. This is your opportunity." Cassian turned. "Opportunity for what?" "To take back your family." Cassian's expression hardened. "I don't want it." Silence filled the room. Adrian stood near the doorway. He had expected Cassian to destroy Victor's organization. He hadn't expected him to destroy his own inheritance. Cassian opened a folder. Inside were records of illegal operations still connected to the Rook Empire. "These businesses are being shut down." One advisor stepped forward. "That will cost you millions." "I know. Some of these people are loyal to your family." Cassian looked at him. "Then they can be loyal somewhere else." He turned to Adrian. "I want every piece of evidence preserved." Adrian nodded. "For the authorities? For the victims?" Over the next several weeks, Cassian dismantled the criminal network piece by piece. He surrendered evidence against corrupt executives. He exposed officials who had accepted bribes. He shut down companies involved in illegal medical research. And he transferred his legitimate wealth into a foundation supporting victims of exploitation. People called him insane. Some called him a traitor to his own family. Cassian didn't care. One evening, Adrian found him alone in the office. "You gave up almost everything." Cassian looked at the city. "My brother died trying to expose this." He paused. "I can't bring him back." Adrian stepped closer. "But you can make sure his death wasn't meaningless." Cassian looked at him. "That's what I'm trying to do." Adrian smiled. "You don't have to do it alone." Cassian's expression softened. "I know." Months later, the foundation opened its first medical center. Adrian helped establish the legal department. They worked together constantly. Too constantly. One evening, Adrian fell asleep at his desk. Cassian quietly placed a coat over his shoulders. Adrian woke. "You know you're still my client." Cassian smiled. "Not for much longer." Adrian frowned. "What does that mean?" Cassian walked away, without answering. But the next morning, he arrived at Adrian's office, carrying a folder. And this time, there was no legal case inside. Cassian placed the folder on Adrian's desk. Adrian looked at it suspiciously. "Another lawsuit? No. Corporate dispute? No. Then what?" Cassian nodded toward the folder. "Open it." Adrian did. Inside were documents transferring Cassian's remaining legitimate family assets into the foundation. Adrian stared. "Why are you giving me this?" "I'm not giving it to you." "Then?" "I want you to oversee the legal side." Adrian looked up. "You have an entire legal department." "I don't want them." "Why?" Cassian's gaze held his. "Because you're the lawyer I trust." Adrian smiled. "That's dangerous." "I know." Cassian took a breath. Then his expression became unusually serious. "I also need to tell you something." Adrian waited. "You're not my attorney anymore." Adrian blinked. "What?" "I've terminated the legal arrangement." "Why?" Cassian stepped closer. "Because I don't want what happens next to be confused with our professional relationship." Adrian's heartbeat quickened. "What happens next?" Cassian looked almost nervous. That surprised Adrian more than anything. "I want to know you, when neither of us needs anything from the other." Adrian stared at him. Cassian continued. "I don't want you because you're my lawyer. I don't want you because you saved me. And I don't want you because I owe you." He paused. "I want you because you're Adrian." The room became completely silent. Adrian looked down. "You've been planning this speech?" Cassian smiled. "Several times. And? I hated all of them." Adrian laughed. "You're terrible at this." "I know." Adrian walked around the desk. "You've been my biggest trouble since the day we met." Cassian nodded. You've told me that. Repeatedly. And yet you're smiling. Adrian stopped in front of him. Unfortunately, Cassian's expression softened. Adrian. He didn't finish. Adrian closed the distance. Their lips met. It was gentle, uncertain, nothing like the dangerous world they had survived together. When they pulled apart, Cassian looked stunned. Adrian smiled. Now you can stop looking terrified. Cassian laughed softly. I wasn't terrified. You were. I was. Adrian shook his head. The man everyone called dangerous had just been nervous about kissing him, and somehow that made Adrian fall even harder. Cassian reached for his hand. Are you sure? Adrian squeezed his fingers. I've never been more sure. For the first time, Cassian wasn't Adrian's client. He was simply the man standing beside him. Loving Cassian turned out to be easier than explaining him. The media still called him dangerous. Some people still whispered that Adrian had been manipulated. But Adrian knew the truth. Cassian never told him where to go, never controlled his career, never used his money to make decisions for him. If anything, Cassian was almost annoyingly respectful. You don't have to agree with me, he'd say. Adrian would laugh. I know. I mean it. I know. Their relationship worked because neither man needed to own the other. Meanwhile, the foundation grew. Adrian became its chief legal counsel, representing vulnerable Omegas who had been exploited by powerful corporations. One case involved a medical company accused of hiding dangerous clinical trials. Adrian's colleagues warned him, this company has connections. Adrian looked at the evidence. So did Victor. You could lose everything. Adrian thought about the man sitting across from him. Cassian had already lost everything he once thought mattered, and still, he had chosen the truth. Adrian closed the file. Then we'll fight. That evening, Cassian found him working late. You took the case. Yes. Are you sure? Adrian looked up. You sound worried. I am. About me? Always. Adrian smiled. You know, you're supposed to be the dangerous one. Cassian walked closer. I've never been afraid of powerful enemies. Then what are you afraid of? Cassian's expression softened. Losing you. Adrian went quiet. Cassian sat beside him. I spent years thinking strength meant controlling everything around me. And now? Now I understand I can't control whether you stay. Adrian reached for his hand. Good. Cassian looked at him. Good? Because I'm staying by choice. Cassian smiled. Adrian leaned against his shoulder. For the first time, he understood what Cassian had changed in him. Before meeting him, Adrian believed courage meant never being afraid. Now he knew better. Courage meant being afraid and fighting anyway. Cassian had become the reason Adrian challenged powerful corporations, the reason he defended people nobody else wanted to represent, the reason he stopped allowing fear to decide his future. Cassian kissed his forehead. You know your trouble too. Adrian laughed. Learned from the best. They sat together in silence. Two men who had entered each other's lives because of a murder case. Neither had expected love. Neither had planned it. But somewhere between courtroom battles, threats, and impossible choices, they had become partners. And tomorrow, Adrian would walk into another courtroom. Not because Cassian needed him, not because anyone had forced him, but because he had finally learned to fight for what he believed in. 5 years later, Adrian stood before a crowded conference hall in downtown Los Angeles. Behind him was a screen, displaying the logo of the foundation he and Cassian had built together. The organization now provided legal assistance, medical support, and emergency housing for vulnerable Omegas who had been exploited by powerful corporations. The work was difficult, but Adrian had never felt more certain about his purpose. A journalist raised her hand. Mr. Vale, your career changed after the Rook case. Adrian smiled. It certainly did. You were assigned one of the most dangerous clients in the country. A few people laughed. Do you regret accepting him? Adrian looked toward the back of the room. Cassian stood there with his arms folded, watching him. Adrian smiled. Every single day. The audience laughed. Cassian shook his head. The journalist smiled. Why? Adrian thought about the frightened man sitting across from him years ago. The murder accusations. The failed breaks. The kidnapping. The courtroom. The truth. Because he was the most difficult client I've ever had. Cassian raised an eyebrow. Adrian continued. But he taught me something. What? That courage isn't the absence of fear. The room became quiet. It's choosing to fight, even when you're afraid. After the conference, Cassian waited outside. You called me difficult. You were dangerous? Extremely. Cassian smiled. And yet you married me. Adrian laughed. Unfortunately. Cassian took his hand. You could have walked away. So could you. I couldn't. Why? Cassian looked at him. Because you were the first person who believed me. Adrian squeezed his fingers. And you were the first person who made me believe in myself. They stood silently beneath the evening lights. The world remembered Cassian Rook as the dangerous alpha once accused of murder. Adrian remembered something different. He remembered a lonely man who had been hunted because he knew the truth. A man who had lost his brother. A man who had trusted one stubborn lawyer. And a man who eventually chose to destroy his family's corrupt empire, rather than become part of it. Cassian leaned closer. Do you remember what you told me when we first met? Adrian smiled. That I was curious. And you still are. Always. Cassian kissed him. Adrian closed his eyes. Years ago, he had accepted Cassian as a client, because everyone else was afraid of him. He never expected that decision to change his life. He never expected the most dangerous man he'd ever represented to become the safest place he'd ever known. And he never expected to discover that fighting for someone else could teach him how to fight for himself. Cassian wasn't his easiest case. He wasn't his safest choice. He wasn't the man Adrian was supposed to love. But he became something far more important. He became the reason Adrian finally found the courage to fight.